Hello guys, and welcome to a new Star Division 2 video today by me, Vulcan. Today I am going to be showing you Task Force Butler. This is the first of two divisions that were added in the Lucky 13 DLC. It is a free DLC, so if you haven't picked up Star Division 2 in a while, then now is a good time to do so, as you have two new free divisions to play around with. They also added a new map recently, so that's cool as well. But as usual, if you'd like to read the description of the division, then feel free to pause. I'm going to jump on in and we'll have a look at the division. So the way that I'm going to do this is we're going to have a look at all of the units available, and then I'll talk about the deck composition and like the way that the activation points are set up, and then I'll show you guys a division that I've already made, since I have already played around with these guys quite a bit. Now there are new units in this DLC, but there aren't new models, so bear that in mind, but there are some cool new units for sure. Recon tab, let's have a look. So cheap 50 cals to start, you get 6 in A, I think 12 in B, and you get 2 cards of these. Good 50 cal support and can be used to rush down your opponents. Then there's the Ffi Saboteurs. These are available in B and C. Unlike some other divisions that have the FFI come in earlier, the FFI in Task Force Butler actually come in later. So in this case, B and C, 12 and 18 availability. This is actually quite a nice unit to supplement your Infantry Tab in the late game. Then we have the Cavalry Scouts. These have the grease guns, the M1 carbines and the bazooka, and 2 smoke grenades. They're actually a really nice sort of bazooka support unit, either early or mid-game. And being able to smoke themselves off is something that a unit like the Razvedka can't do, so nice utility in that regard. Then they can also come with decent transport. So they've got the M5a1 Cavalry half-track, and this is in fact a Recon half-track. So it's like a 50 cal half-track standard, but has recon capability, which is actually really nice because it supports your units really, really well. Going over the transports for the Saboteurs quickly, you do get the tractions, which are nice, and you can also bring them in the DMAs. Then there's a card of the Commandos Deflec. These are a relatively new unit to the game because I think they were introduced with the 1E DFL. But either way, 4 submachine guns, 5 M1 Garands, and an automatic rifle means that they can shoot at close range, or they can do quite a lot of damage at close range, and yeah, be a menace to units that rely on machine guns. They're not going to win against other units that have like TNT, for example, but they are pretty strong otherwise. And they have an M1 bazooka, which is nice because they do have exceptional stealth, so they're able to sneak about and use that as well. Then we have the M5a1 Recon. We've seen this do it in the game quite a few times now. It is a reasonably good unit for 40 points, but it kind of gets outclassed most of the time by the M8 because the M8 has much superior sort of maneuverability, let's say. I mean, off-road, the M5a1 Recon's the same, but the M8 on-road is 90 km/h compared to the road speed of 58 km/h of the M5a1. Of course, you do get more machine guns on the M5a1, which can be helpful for pinning down infantry quicker, but either way, the M8 I think is generally preferred. So you get 5 cards in the Recon tab that only cost 1 activation point. It's pretty big, so you can get quite a lot of these units into your decks. Let's move on to the Infantry tab. So you got the FFI Leader available. These again come in the late game like B and C, so 6 and 9 availability. You got a card of Engineers. These come in earlier, so the Engineers can come in phase A and B, 6 and 12 availability. You've got the Rallies. I believe this is maybe a new unit. I don't think we've seen these in Star Division 2 at least. These come with a submachine gun, the PPSH. They have 6 Kar 98s and an MG34. So again, coming in the late game because they're FFI, 18 and 27 availability. A good supplement late game infantry unit. And then there's also the Macstars. These guys are pretty standard. We've seen these before. 3 Stens, the 8 Kar-98s, an automatic rifle, plus the Molotov means they're pretty damn good at close range, and they can also put down some DPS at range as well with the automatic rifle and rifle combination there. 18 available in A, 27 in C. Then you got the OSS leader. These come in B and C. They have the UD-M42. I believe this is due a model update in the next, or like the following Nemesis DLC, I believe. And then you've got the M1 carbines, 30 cal, and 3 smoke grenades. So quite nice utility support leader. Then you got the rifles late. These are probably going to be the backbone of your early game. You can do a lot of damage with these, both at close range and long range, because the BAR is a automatic rifle, so it gets to move and shoot, and it also means that it can fire within the 100 meter range. So a very strong unit, especially upvetted, can decimate units at medium range. It will get kind of beaten up by Schützen, for example, at long range, like double MG42 squads, and it will get beaten by TNT at close range, but sort of for anything else, rifles late will probably beat them. Finally, you get a card of rifle leaders. These are forced to come in at 1-star vet, so you get 2, 4, and 6 in terms of availability throughout the phases. And then you've got 2 submachine guns, 5 M1 ground, or 5 M1 carbines, sorry, and then you've got the Springfield rifle with low ammunition, and then the bazooka there. Like, this low ammunition is something to pay attention to because it does run out pretty fast if you use it a lot. And then, yeah, the M1 bazooka. This is actually a really nice sort of infantry support squad for your rifles in the early game. Moving on to the tank tab, you got the M5a1s available, only in Phase A. 8 available there. A bit of a cheaper version than the Recon version. This is probably where you'd use it if you were going to bring it in, as opposed to the Recon variant. Then you got the M8 Cavalry. This actually costs the same amount as the Recon variant, but without the Recon. So generally you want to take the Recon instead. Then you've got the Command M4A1. Only 2 of these available in Phase A. M4A1 available in A and B, 6 and 12 availability. And then the M4A176, which has the better gun, and these are again available in A and B. So it looks like, based on the armor availability, that Task Force Butler is actually pretty strong in the early game, and so in a Maverick or Vanguard deck it would be very good, but in the late game you are going to struggle for armor availability, so bear that in mind. Support tab, you do get access to these FFI 2-inch mortars, but they come in B and C again. You've got 2 cards of 30 cals if you want to bring these in, 6 available in A, 12, and then 20 in Phase C. These can also be brought in with the WC25HMG, which has a 50 cal on it, so decent support. Then you got the MG34 available for the FFI. You can get 12 and 18 of these in the late game. M8 Scott is available. Not the most useful unit since the range rework. I feel like it kind of can deal with infantry quite well for you, I guess, but is going to get decimated by any AT gun it comes up against, except maybe 1,250 meter range AT guns. But honestly, by the time you spot one of those, it's probably going to be in range. So the M8 Scott's not ideal. You've got the DMA logistics trucks and the GMC supply trucks. These are basically the same thing, just whichever you want to bring in. Just bear in mind that the FFI truck can only be brought in B and C. The 50 cal is available as well, the 50 cal squad, A, B, and C. 4 in A, B, 8 in B, and then 12 in C. In terms of transports, again, WC25 HMG as well. This only has 750 meter range compared to the actual 1,250 meter range of the MG on the ground, so do bear that in mind. You can't just unload this at max range and then have this do the same, provide that same support. This actually has to be closer, the vehicle, in order to apply its damage. Then you got the M4105. This has an interesting vet curve. It goes 2 in A, but at 1 vet, it's the same as 2 vet in terms of availability. I don't know if this is going to stay the same, but at the moment, it just seems like worth bringing it to 2 vet. You might as well. And then in terms of commanders, you've got the choice of the Ffi truck, the commander unit itself, which again can be brought in with the WC25 HMG, or you can use the M20 commander. And generally, the M20 commander is going to be the one you want to take because it has armor. It's going to be a lot less vulnerable to artillery fire. In the anti-tank tab, you've got Ffi partisans. These are great in the early game because you can rush them forwards with the Ffi tractions, but because they're coming in the late game, they're not as useful here. 8 in B and 12 in C. Bazookas 6A, 12B, 18C, and yeah, standard stuff. You guys have seen bazooka squads before. Then there's a new unit, but this model isn't new. I believe it was before on the back of a truck. So they've taken it off the truck and made it a little AT gun. You can only bring them in B at 2-star veterancy, which gives them 22 round per minute rate of fire and very good accuracy. But they can only fire at 750 meter range and only have 50 millimeters of penetration. So great for transport sniping and killing light vehicles, but not much else. So bear that in mind. It's not the best AT gun in the world. Might be fun to try out though. Then there's the M1 guns. You get 3 of these in A, 6 of them in B, same as always. AP shells, no APCR though, do bear that in mind, and 50% accuracy. Then you got the Pak 40 available, 1 card of these, again no APCR, 145mm penetration at 1750 meter range. Pak 40s are good though, they can destroy most medium armor. Then you got the M10. Now these do come with APCR. You get 3 of them in A, 6 of them in B if you're not veteran, not making them up vet. And the APCR on this unit is very strong. 185mm of penetration at 2000 meter range with 50% accuracy. So a very, very decent unit. Give it a bit of veterancy and it's going to be hitting hard and fast. Just make sure you have some supply nearby so that you can resupply those APCR shells if you want to take maximum range engagements versus things like Tigers and Panthers. Otherwise, you can kind of rely on the AP shells against more medium armor, but generally you want to use that range advantage as much as you can so that you aren't fired back at, since the M10 doesn't have the best armor. Moving on, we have the anti-air tab. Now the anti-air tab in both of the divisions available in this DLC are pretty naff. So in this case, they've got access to the Citroen Hotchkiss, which is a double Hotchkiss mounted on the back of a truck. You get 12 of these in B if you want them. And there's the Ffi Cannon 25mm. You get 6 of these in B at 1-star veterancy. This is probably more likely what you'd want to take, and then give it some veterancy to make it more effective. And then you've got the M15 Cgmc, which is pretty much your only Phase A option for AA, so you're going to almost always want to take this early on. Artillery tab, you got access to the artillery commanders. You've got 60mm mortars and 81mm mortars. 81mm mortars here do have radio, so bear that in mind. It does make them much more accurate and aim faster against targets. And then you got the M7 actually 3 cards of these priests. They're okay. They're not the most reliable, and their rate of fire is kind of trash. So, yeah, not my biggest recommendation ever. This, however, the Long Tom, is a very good gun in Star Division 2. Does a lot of damage, has a decent rate of fire. So you can certainly suppress an area very quickly with these. And you have a lot of availability of them. You get 2 in B and 4 in C. And generally you don't upvet your artillery, so you're going to be looking at those numbers for availability. In terms of off-map, you have access to the M3OP, which is a 203mm off-map. It has 2 strikes, and you can bring in 1 in A, 2 in B, and 3 in C. Finally, we move on to the air tab. We have the P5B1 Lightning, which is your Recon Lightning. Only 2 available in A, 4 in B, and 6 in C. Currently, Recon aircraft have been reverted. They were very strong for a little while after the last patch, but that was actually reverted. So currently they're not that strong. They're still okay if, you know, the skies are clear and there's no AA, but that's not very often. So I don't think you'll see much use of these until maybe Air Recon gets a buff again. B26b is available. This is a ground strafing variant. It comes with the 5 M2 Browning in the nose, so basically these 4 on the side plus the one in the front, I'm pretty sure is those 5, and then it's got, actually this must be that one, so I'm not sure where the 5th machine gun is in the front, unless it means that you can use that one as a ground strafing as well. Either way, it does of course have plenty of turrets. You got one on the back there and one on the top, so it does do quite a lot of damage to aircraft if they're flying nearby. Anyway, moving on, we've got Beaufighters. You get a fighter variant of them, which comes in 4 in A and 6 in B. Their agility is not very good, so they aren't the best dogfighters, but they can intercept units here and there. Not very well though, because their speed's really low, so you're going to have to time it right. Have these kind of already hanging about, really, if you want them to be useful. Then you have the Hellcats, which are much more useful. They have good agility, and they have medium resilience. You can get 4 of these in A, 8 of them in B, and 12 of them in C. I think the Beaufighter also gets medium resilience. Yeah, it does. But yeah, basically that makes them a lot more tanky compared to standard fighters, and the availability here on these Hellcats is actually really nice. There is the Beaufighter Mark 10 with the air-to-ground AP rockets, or HESAP rockets. These are the same rockets, I believe, that the Typhoon gets, and it gets the same amount. They are pretty strong, so if you can find a time where there's not much AA up, these can be really, really good, because the reason that AA sucks for them so much is because they're pretty slow. 410 kilometers per hour for a ground attack aircraft is not great, especially when you're diving towards your enemy. You don't want to be doing that for too long, because you'll take way more damage. Planes actually take more damage in the front, so like it's actually like a thing in Steel Division 2. So the more time you're diving for, the worse it is. So when you don't have any AA, that's the best time to use these, or when the enemy don't have any AA. Next up, B26gb Marauder. This has 4 454 kilogram bombs. I find these bombs are very effective, and this bomber itself is quite well defended in terms of machine guns. If you get a bunch of these together, which you really can, because they go 2 in A, 4 in B, and 7 in C, you can certainly build up a big bomber fleet and bring them all in at once and decimate things. At the moment though, because AA is quite strong, in a team game you're probably not going to get away with bringing that many Marauders, and in a 1v1 or 2v2 you won't have enough time to. So it's like bringing in bombers in the late game is kind of like a risk reward. Bringing these in earlier would probably be preferable, so you can get your bang for your buck out of them. Also, availability on this Beaufighter, I didn't think I went through it, is 1, 2, and then 4 in Phase C. The P-38J-15 with 2 227 kilogram bombs. Nice fast fighter bomber, 575 kilometers per hour. Speed is actually really good, but it's very weak. It's got bad resilience, so it gets shot down very easily by AA, and even if it just spends a little while heading towards AA, it's probably not going to come out alive. So you've got to be really careful with where you use these. Finally, there is the P-47 with 2 454 kilogram bombs. These bombs again are very nice, but the plane itself doesn't have much availability and they're quite expensive. So only 1 in A, 2 in B, and 4 in C. Like compared to like just getting 2 Marauders in Phase A at 135 points with 4 bombs, if you compare that to the P-47, because the fighter bomber, yes, it's much faster and it has the medium resilience, which is why it costs more and there's less availability, but ultimately, you know, the Marauder's better value for money. So bear that in mind. And that's all of the units. I don't believe there's any new defences, so yeah, that's it for Task Force Butler. Now, as you can see, for the availability, you get plenty of availability in the Recon tab. You get quite a lot of availability in the Infantry tab, although these 3 cost cards can be a bit difficult to work around. Tank tab's relatively generous. You're probably going to go 4 cards there. You get a decent amount of support in as well. Anti-tank is okay. Anti-air, of course, you're going to have both cards, because otherwise you just get overrun by enemy air in any scenario. Artillery is kind of like a maybe. If you want to fit some stuff in here, then you definitely can. But if you put in too much, it gets quite expensive. And the air tab is actually quite cheap. So you're going to be able to get quite a lot of this air support in. And having fighters is super important for this deck because you're lacking AA. Same goes for the other division, Panzer Division Tatra. So there you go. That's the kind of like the curve. I will take you guys over to a division I've made to quickly discuss that. So here we are with my deck, Task Force Butler. If you'd like to get access to my decks, there is a link in the description that will take you to a Google document that will provide you with every single deck that I use. And some of them aren't completely up to date, but for the most part they are. And yeah, you'll be able to find this one here or this one there as well. So what you can see I've done here is I have made it balanced because I generally play 3v3, 4v4 and 10v10s. And I've kind of spread it out so that we have a reasonable amount of tanks for the sort of mid to late game. I've up-vetted them because M4s in general benefit a lot from veterancy because they sort of turn their turrets very quickly and acquire targets very fast. They have a decent aim time. So giving them the veterancy to make sure they don't miss that first shot is super important, and that's why I've done that there with all of the M4s that you can see. I brought in M8s in the early game plus M8 cavalries in the tank tab in case I want to do like an early M8 push. I've got the Cavalry Scouts in here with the M5a1 half track for early recon capability, but also so I have this cavalry half track to help me out. The Commandos Deflec are kind of like my mid-game recon unit of choice, and then I've got some extra M8s there as well, which can help support any infantry pushes. And then I've got the Ffi Saboteurs, which are primarily there to help the Ffi Rallies in the late game secure close-range engagements, because you don't really have much choice for close-range engagement tools in the Infantry tab in the late game, because your rifles and engineers are forced to come in either A or B. So in C, you don't really have any choice other than the Macstars. And the issue you get is that these cards start to get quite expensive. So I've kind of taken up a cheaper card in the Recon tab to get my close range infantry in, and then support them with the Rallies, which are equally quite cheap. And it gives you quite a lot of staying power for phase C, at least for a little while. This division will definitely struggle if it goes past like 40-50 minutes because you'll start to run out of stuff. But in a long game, which, you know, 3v3, 4v4s and 10v10s generally are, having at least some like late game like this is super important. So that's how I built that. I've got the engineers there, as many as I can for the TNT early on, and I've also brought in both the rifle lates with extra veterancy, so that with the rifle leader plus the commander, I can make those 3-star veterancy, and they can be very, very effective. In the Phase A, I do currently use the M4 105 with the 2-star veterancy. If I wasn't able to bring this at 2-star veterancy, I'd probably maybe bring the Scots or switch around some cards so that I'd bring something in elsewhere. But yeah, I have brought in the M20 Commander. It's definitely the best one in my opinion. MG34s in Phase B. Having 12 availability of these can set you up for a really strong mid-game. Plus supply in Phase C, which is mainly for the long toms here, because these long toms can't come with any transports that provide supply. So that's pretty important. In the anti-tank tab, I've brought the M1 guns in the early game, and then I've got 2 cards of the M10 destroyers. The M10 destroyers are easily the best armor that you can get in this deck because of the APCR shells that they have. So super important that you bring these in, and I'm just maximizing availability on these by not taking any extra veterancy, although generally I will have a leader buy them if I'm using them at maximum range to give them extra accuracy. Anti-air, definitely the CGMC in Phase A, you have to take it, and then the 25mm in Phase B. Having them come in at the base 1 veterancy there is really, really nice. And with 3-star veterancy, these 25mm can actually do quite a lot of damage. In the artillery tab, I've got the mortars, and I've also got supply for those. These radio mortars are actually really quite effective, and I've also got off map as well if I need it. Phase B, I do have artillery commanders, so that I can supplement leaders here instead of having a second card of leaders in the infantry tab. I think this is almost a must for Task Force Butler, because if you waste 2 cards on leaders in the infantry tab, you're going to be using up a lot of activation points. And then I've got, yeah, the 2 cards of long toms. They're very, very good, especially for like longer games. You can get quite a lot of damage done with those. Then in the air tab, Hellcats, necessity. Having fighters in this division is super important. I've got the bombers in Phase A as well. Being able to bomb somebody with 4 450kg bombs in Phase A is pretty big. Then I've got Beaufighters in C. You're probably wondering why I'm bringing these in C, because often, you know, there's quite a lot of AA later in the game. Well, basically, there are those times where your opponent might neglect AA, or you've managed to artillery the enemy AA, and that's when these Beaufighters with these rockets can really come into their own. Those moments where there is a lack of AA, you can just snipe really heavy targets and get really good value off of these Beaufighters. Finally, I have a card of these Marauders. Maybe a bit overkill. This is just my old habit of bringing in a lot of bombers late game. It's not so good these days, so I'd recommend, if you are looking at my deck, maybe changing this card out, like just removing it, putting it somewhere else, like putting something somewhere else, or changing it to another card of fighters or something like that. That would probably be better, or maybe even fighter bombers, so you have kind of a bit of a versatility. And there you have it. That's Task Force Butler. Personally, I think it's quite a cool division. The mix of the American units with the FFI, nothing particularly new in terms of like what we're seeing, but the mix of units like the Beaufighter and the Hellcat and the Rallies and just like some new units kind of makes this quite fresh. So yeah, I like Task Force Butler. I think it's actually going to be quite strong in 1v1s and 2v2s. We might see it competitively as like a Maverick deck. I think it'll probably be pretty good. And then in terms of team games, maybe not so much. I think it's going to struggle, especially in extended games that go on past like 50-60 minutes, particularly in like a 4v4 that doesn't have a time limit. You could definitely struggle a lot with this division, but otherwise I think it's pretty strong. And that's it. Yeah, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed my look at Task Force Butler. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. But yeah, very, very cool that Eugen has brought us these divisions for free. So definitely make sure to check them out. But that is it from me for now. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.